There's a tiny part of me that almost feels like I'm doing this under false pretenses, because for the last 2 years I haven't been a writer. I've basically been a showrunner. I made a television show because I promised Terry Pratchett, who 30 years ago I wrote a novel with, that I would make it, and then he died, which turned it into a last request. And many is the time that I have cursed him for dying in the last 2 years, because otherwise I could have just stopped. But the end of January, I got to finish being a showrunner, and people now are saying, so, were you going to do any more television? And I'm like, no, I'm a retired showrunner. And in my retirement, I'm thinking of taking up writing. I became a writer more or less overnight when I was 22 by deciding I was a writer and setting out in the world and telling people I was a writer. I had perhaps more chutzpah than sense. That I became a writer in reality was really due to other writers, older writers, more experienced and successful writers, sometimes proper grown-up writers, and sometimes writers who were just 6 months further along than I was, helping me along. They talked to me, they invited me to events, they suggested me for projects that they didn't happen to want to do. They were, in those first few years, the difference between starving, which I didn't, and surviving, which I did. Sometimes it took writing books about Duran Duran, but I paid my rent, and I fed myself, and somewhere in there, I was able to buy an electric typewriter. My teachers were other writers because they were generous with their knowledge. Lots of people saw potential in me, and they helped. I went from being a vaguely competent writer to being a good one because people helped and advised. I've had the kind of career where you do a lot of things you don't really know how to do. And I managed that because writers who did know how to do that kind of thing were always generous and willing to offer suggestions, to read my work, to inspire, to share knowledge, and to recommend me to editors, to other writers, to magazines. One of the first graphic novels I was ever involved in the UK, oddly enough, a collection of retold Bible stories, was the target of tabloid newspaper fury. Do not attempt to retell anything from the Book of Judges. And I found myself, age 25, debating the right to make art on the radio with angry politicians who thought that sort of thing should be done away with. I moved to America about 5 years after that, 27 years ago, and immediately fell head over heels in love with the First Amendment. I came from a country that did not have any kind of First Amendment. Freedom of speech was in no way enshrined anywhere in the law. We had the Obscene Publications Act. We had the Official Secrets Act. We had some obscure and arcane Victorian customs laws, originally written to curb the importation of dangerous plants. which meant that UK customs could not only confiscate any publications they found in any way offensive coming into the country, but they could also confiscate any other books or periodicals being imported in that shipment because they might have been contaminated by the offending books. So if I had a cause once I came here, it was the First Amendment, helping and defending writers, publishers, and readers being targeted by people who didn't think that other people should be allowed to read that kind of thing. And beyond that, I wanted to help other writers, to give them a leg up, to give them advice, to listen, to point them at organizations and people who could help, and to share knowledge of other kinds as well. There is a fellowship of us, people of all kinds and shapes, all genders and ethnicities, writers of all kinds trying to change the world by making art. They are my people, and I'm glad of anything I've done to help them up the ladder, as they too, I hope, will do in their turn. We help each other and we change the world. Thank you.